reality itself bent to their will. Beings of such profound technological advancement that their works appeared as sorcery to lesser races, the Old Ones stood as the first and greatest civilization in the galaxy. Their mastery over the fundamental forces of existence elevated them beyond mere biological evolution, transforming them into entities that could reshape worlds with a thought and traverse the cosmos through the corridors of the webway. Millions of years before humanity's first stumbling steps toward civilization, when the galaxy was young and full of potential, the Old Ones emerged as its shepherds and architects. Their genesis remains shrouded in mystery, but their impact resonates through time like ripples in the cosmic fabric, touching every aspect of life in the universe. They were not merely the first spacefaring race. They were the progenitors of life itself, the masters of genetic manipulation who seeded countless worlds with the building blocks of evolution. The achievements of the Old Ones dwarf anything accomplished by subsequent civilizations. They understood the warp not as some mystical realm of chaos and danger, but as a fundamental aspect of reality to be harnessed and controlled. Through their psychic mastery, they created the webway, a labyrinth dimension between real space and the warp that allowed instantaneous travel across vast distances. This network of tunnels and corridors remains largely intact even in the 41st millennium, though the Eldar claim only a fraction of its original scope. Perhaps most remarkably, the Old Ones possessed the ability to create entire species according to their grand designs. The Eldar were their masterpiece, a psychically gifted race engineered to be companions and eventual inheritors. The Krork, precursors to the Orcs, were living weapons designed to fight their wars. Countless other species, now extinct or devolved beyond recognition, emerged from their genetic laboratories to serve specific purposes in their grand plan for the galaxy. Yet for all their power and wisdom, the Old Ones were not infallible. Their greatest triumph, mastery over life itself, ultimately contributed to their downfall. The species they created and uplifted would play crucial roles in the devastating war in heaven, a conflict that would reshape the galaxy and lead to catastrophic consequences that echo into the present day. Their legacy is a complex tapestry of triumph and hubris, of unparalleled achievement and devastating miscalculation. As we delve deeper into their story, we must remember that much of what we know about the Old Ones comes filtered through millions of years of history, preserved in fragments by their creations and successors. The true scope of their civilization, their ultimate fate, and the full extent of their technologies remain subjects of fierce debate among scholars of the Imperium. What cannot be disputed is their fundamental role in shaping the galaxy as it exists in the grim darkness of the far future. Celestial dominance during the era of the Old Ones involved numerous significant factions, each wielding powers beyond modern comprehension. At the apex stood the Katan, star-born entities of pure energy who fed upon solar radiation. These cosmic vampires existed in perfect opposition to the Old Ones, representing the purely physical aspects of reality against the Old Ones' mastery of the immaterial. The Deceiver, the Nightbringer, and the Void Dragon emerged as particularly influential Katan, each pursuing their own inscrutable agendas while viewing younger races as mere sustenance. The Necrontyr arose as tragic antagonists, their civilization born under the harsh radiation of a dying star. Cursing their brief, painful existence, they looked upon the Old Ones' immortality with bitter envy. This deep-seated resentment transformed into genocidal hatred when the Old Ones refused to share their life-extending technologies. The Necrontyr's fateful alliance with the Katan would later result in their transformation into the soulless Necrons, trading their flesh for living metal in a bargain that would haunt the galaxy forever. Central to the Old Ones' strategy were their created races, engineered for specific purposes in their cosmic design. The Elder represented the pinnacle of their bioengineering, psychically attuned warriors whose natural connection to the warp exceeded even that of their creators. The Krork, engineered as the ultimate adaptive warriors, possessed encoded knowledge that activated in response to threat levels, ensuring they could face any enemy with appropriate force. The Jokairo, though less numerous, demonstrated extraordinary technological aptitude, serving as living repositories of advanced scientific knowledge. Less documented but equally significant were the Slan amphibian-like beings who some scholars believe acted as the Old One's primary administrators and coordinators. Their profound understanding of the Old One's technologies suggests they may have been among the first species uplifted, trusted with overseeing vast portions of their master's empire. The few remaining records hint at their role in maintaining the webway and managing the deployment of other created races. Enslaver plagues emerged as an unexpected player, representing the warp's hostile response to increasing psychic activity in the material universe. These entities exploited the growing networks of psychically active beings, turning the Old One's greatest strength, their mastery of the immaterial, into a devastating vulnerability. Their emergence marked a critical turning point, introducing chaos into what had been a relatively ordered conflict. The War in Heaven also saw the rise of numerous supporting factions, lesser races either created or manipulated by the major powers. These included specialized warrior strains, psychic amplifier species, and biological weapons whose original purposes have been lost to time. Many of these races met their extinction during the conflict, while others devolved or evolved into unrecognizable forms, contributing to the galaxy's rich but dangerous biodiversity. Monitoring these events were the enigmatic Rude, temporal parasites whose unique perception of time has led some scholars to speculate about their true role in the conflict. Whether they were created as observers, emerged naturally, or represented another power's intervention remains hotly debated in forbidden archives across the Imperium. Their entropic presence added another layer of complexity to an already multifaceted war. At the fringes of these titanic struggles, the first primitive human societies took their tentative steps towards civilization, unwittingly witnessed the greatest conflict the galaxy would ever know. Their survival, against all odds, would prove ironically significant in the aftermath of these ancient powers' mutual destruction. Technological supremacy breeds both admiration and resentment, a universal truth that echoed across the ancient galaxy. The Old One's mastery over life and death created an insurmountable divide between them and younger races, particularly the Necrontyre, whose bitter existence under a radiation-blasted sky made them acutely aware of their mortality. This fundamental disparity in living conditions and lifespans laid the groundwork for a conflict that would reshape reality itself. The Old One's decision to establish themselves as the galaxy's stewards carried profound implications. Their manipulation of countless worlds' ecosystems demonstrated an unprecedented level of bioengineering prowess, yet it also revealed a concerning pattern of technological possessiveness. They carefully guarded their most advanced knowledge, sharing only carefully measured portions with their created races. This protective stance, while potentially wise from their perspective, generated growing frustration among those denied access to their life-extending capabilities. Psychic dominance over the warp represented another crucial factor. The Old One's understanding and manipulation of this dimension gave them unparalleled advantages, but simultaneously introduced severe vulnerabilities into the fabric of reality. Their continued exploitation of psychic technologies gradually weakened the barriers between materium and immaterium, creating microscopic tiers that would eventually contribute to catastrophic consequences. The creation of the webway, while a masterpiece of engineering, introduced additional complications. This vast network of dimensional corridors required constant maintenance and protection, consuming significant resources and attention. The Old One's reliance on this transportation system made them increasingly dependent on fixed infrastructure, limiting their tactical flexibility when faced with unexpected threats. Political dynamics among the created races added another layer of complexity. The Eldar's elevated status as the Old One's favored creation generated subtle tensions with other engineered species. The Krork's aggressive tendencies, though initially carefully controlled, showed signs of potential instability. These internal stresses within the Old One's empire created weak points that their enemies would eventually exploit. The Katan's awakening marked a critical turning point in galactic politics. These ancient entities' transition from simple energy consumers to conscious beings coincided with their discovery of sentient life's unique flavors. Their growing hunger for more complex forms of sustenance drove them to seek alliances that would facilitate their feeding, finding willing partners among the desperate Necrontyre. Environmental pressures played a significant role in shaping the coming conflict. The Necrontyre's harsh homeworld had forged them into bitter, resentful beings long before they encountered the Old Ones. Their society's obsession with death and preservation arose naturally from their circumstances, making them particularly susceptible to the Katan's manipulations. This cultural foundation would prove crucial in their willingness to accept biotransference, despite its horrific cost. The Old One's empire's rapid expansion generated increasing administrative challenges. Their reliance on created races to manage vast territories led to varying interpretations of their directives. The Slan's attempts to maintain order sometimes clashed with local developments, creating pockets of resistance that would later align with their enemies. This decentralization of power, while necessary for managing their vast holdings, introduced vulnerabilities into their governance structure. Technological advancement among younger races proceeded at an unprecedented pace under the Old One's influence. However, this progress focused primarily on psychic and biological technologies, leaving significant gaps in other areas. The Necrontyre's independent development of advanced material sciences, particularly in metallurgy and energy manipulation, would prove crucial in the coming conflict. This technological divergence created opportunities for devastating tactical innovations that the Old Ones had not anticipated. The stage for conflict was further set by the Old Ones' fundamental approach to galaxy-wide governance. Their belief in controlled evolution and guided development, while benevolent in intent, essentially imposed a form of species-wide stagnation on races they deemed unready for advancement. This paternalistic approach fostered deep-seated resentment among those subjected to their oversight, creating a reservoir of potential allies for any force opposing their dominion. 60 million years marked the zenith of the Old One's dominion, their mastery over life reaching unprecedented heights. Within their laboratories, they perfected the creation of the Eldar, embedding within their genetic code profound psychic capabilities and near-immortal lifespans. Simultaneously, they established vast networks of webway gates, connecting thousands of worlds through corridors of twisted space-time. This period saw the first encounters with the Necrontyre, whose primitive spacefaring capabilities had finally brought them into contact with the broader galaxy. The subsequent 5 million years witnessed escalating tensions as the Necrontyre expanded their holdings. Their scientists developed revolutionary technologies in desperate attempts to extend their species' lifespan, yet each breakthrough proved insufficient compared to the Old One's mastery over life itself. Diplomatic overtures turned to demands, then to threats, as the Necrontyre leadership grew increasingly bitter. The Old One's repeated refusals to share their life-extending technologies catalyzed the formation of the Necrontyre's first galaxy-wide empire, united by shared resentment. A critical juncture arrived when Necrontyre explorers discovered the Katan feeding upon their home star. Initial contact with these energy beings sparked a technological revolution as the Necrontyre developed methods to transfer the Katan's essence into necrodermis bodies. This breakthrough marked the beginning of their unholy alliance, though the full implications remained unknown to the Necrontyre leadership. The Katan, particularly the Deceiver, manipulated these interactions to serve their own unfathomable purposes. The first phase of the war in heaven erupted with unprecedented violence. Necrontyre forces, bolstered by Katan technology, launched simultaneous attacks across multiple sectors. The Old Ones, despite their superior technology, found themselves initially overwhelmed by the sheer scale and coordination of the assault. This period saw the first deployment of the Krork, purpose-built warriors designed to match and exceed the Necrontyre's military capabilities. Facing potential defeat, the Necrontyre underwent biotransference, transforming their entire species into the mechanical Necrons. This process, overseen by the Katan, stripped them of their souls but granted them virtual immortality. The newly created Necrons emerged as nearly unstoppable warriors, their living metal bodies capable of self-repair and their weapons able to sever the connection between material and immaterial realms. The middle phase of the war witnessed the Old Ones' strategic adaptation. They accelerated the development of new warrior species and expanded the webway network to facilitate rapid military response. The Eldar reached their full potential during this period, becoming the Old Ones' most effective weapons against both Necrons and Katan. Meanwhile, the Krork evolved rapidly, their encoded knowledge activating increasingly sophisticated combat capabilities. Catastrophic changes in the warp marked the war's later stages. The intense psychic activity generated by billions of battles created growing instability in the Immaterium. The Old Ones' desperate attempts to harness more psychic power weakened reality's fabric, allowing the first enslaver plagues to manifest. These entities turned the Old Ones' psychically active creations against them, adding a new dimension of horror to the already apocalyptic conflict. The final phase saw the combined effects of physical and metaphysical warfare devastating the galaxy. While the Necrons and Katan focused on destroying the Old Ones' material works, the growing warp disturbances consumed entire systems. The Old Ones' remaining strongholds fell one by one, their greatest works either destroyed or corrupted beyond recognition. In a last desperate gambit, they unleashed weapons that fundamentally altered the nature of reality itself, though records of these weapons' exact nature remain fragmentary. The Old Ones' ultimate fate became split across multiple possibilities. Some evidence suggests they retreated to hidden sanctuaries deep within the webway, while other sources indicate their complete extinction. A third theory proposes their transformation into pure energy beings, ascending to a higher plane of existence. The truth likely combines elements of all these possibilities, reflecting the complex nature of their civilization's end. The war's aftermath left the galaxy fundamentally changed. The Necrons, having turned against and imprisoned their Katan masters, entered their great sleep in hidden tomb worlds. The Eldar inherited the remnants of the webway and began their long reign as the galaxy's dominant species. The Krork devolved into the Orcs, their original purpose forgotten, but their core programming intact. These consequences would echo through millions of years, shaping the conflicts of ages yet to come. Biotransference represented more than mere technological advancement. It fundamentally altered the nature of the war in heaven. The Necrontyre's desperate bargain with the Katan unleashed an unprecedented horror upon the galaxy, an entire species willingly surrendering their souls for immortality. This transformation occurred within a single moment across thousands of worlds, as vast energy batteries harvested the essence of billions of Necrontyre, leaving behind armies of soulless living metal constructs. The Old Ones witnessed this metamorphosis with mounting horror, recognizing too late the true implications of the Katan's involvement. Their sophisticated biological weapons, designed to target the Necrontyre's cellular structures, became suddenly obsolete. Countless carefully crafted plagues and engineered viruses, representing millions of years of research, proved useless against foes who no longer possessed organic matter to corrupt. This instant invalidation of their primary warfare strategies forced a complete tactical re-evaluation. Within the newly formed Necron ranks, the transformation triggered immediate and devastating psychological effects. The process stripped away not just their souls, but their emotions, memories, and individuality. Lower-ranked Necrontyre found themselves reduced to mindless automata, while their leaders retained personality but lost the very drives and passions that had fueled their rebellion. This mass lobotomization of an entire species created an army of unprecedented efficiency, unencumbered by fear, doubt, or mercy. The Katan's betrayal emerged gradually as they began feeding on the released spiritual energy of the transformed Necrontyre. These star gods grew exponentially more powerful, consuming the very essence of their supposed allies. The process revealed their true nature, not as saviors or partners, but as cosmic predators who had orchestrated the entire transformation to create a more efficient feeding ground. This revelation would later drive the surviving Necron lords to their own act of rebellion. Technological implications of biotransference extended far beyond combat capabilities. The Necrons' new bodies, composed of living metal, could repair devastating damage and even reconstruct themselves from total destruction. Their weapons, incorporating Satan phase technology, could separate the material and immaterial aspects of their targets, rendering the Old One's mastery over the warp increasingly irrelevant. This technological leap created an unprecedented asymmetry in warfare capabilities. The Old One's response to this development proved catastrophic in its own right. Their desperate attempt to counter the Necron threat led to the rapid development and deployment of increasingly unstable psychic weapons. These devices, while temporarily effective, created permanent tears in reality's fabric. The resulting warp disturbances attracted entities that would later be known as enslavers, introducing a third devastating force into an already apocalyptic conflict. Strategic realignments following biotransference transformed the nature of space warfare. The Necrons' living metal ships, powered by captured Satan energies, could execute previously impossible maneuvers. Their ability to phase in and out of reality rendered traditional void shields useless, while their regenerative capabilities made conventional damage irrelevant. The Old Ones found their mastery of the webway partially negated by enemies who could simply bypass normal space-time constraints. The psychological impact on the Old Ones' created races proved equally significant. Witnessing an entire species willingly surrender their souls created a deep-seated horror that would echo through generations. The Eldar, in particular, developed an intense spiritual revulsion toward artificial intelligence and soul manipulation that would influence their culture for millions of years. This trauma contributed to their eventual fall into decadence as they desperately embraced sensation to affirm their own spiritual existence. Biotransference's success encouraged the Katan to experiment with even more extreme forms of reality manipulation. Their growing mastery over physical laws led to weapons that could extinguish stars, shatter planets, and rewrite the fundamental constants of space-time. These experiments caused permanent damage to the galaxy's structure, creating regions where reality itself became unstable. Many of these areas remain dangerous even in the 41st millennium, their ancient wounds still bleeding into space. The ultimate strategic result of biotransference manifested in the total reformation of warfare itself. Combat evolved from a contest of biological adaptation and psychic mastery into an apocalyptic clash between fundamentally opposed forms of existence. The material science of the Necrons warred against the psychic sorcery of the Old Ones, with reality itself as the battlefield. This transformation set the stage for the war's final phases and established patterns of conflict that would influence warfare for millions of years to come. Psychic scars carved into reality's fabric marked the war in Heaven's most immediate aftermath. Entire sectors of space became permanently corrupted, their fundamental laws warped by weapons that should never have existed. These regions manifested as reality tumors, where time flowed backwards, causality broke down, and matter itself rebelled against universal constants. Such zones remain quarantined even in the 41st millennium, their borders marked by warning beacons in languages so ancient, none remember how to read them. The Webway network, once a marvel of engineering spanning the galaxy, lay in ruins. Vast sections collapsed or became corrupted, their corridors now leading to impossible dimensions or trapping travelers in endless time loops. The surviving pathways claimed by the Eldar represented mere fragments of the original network's scope. These damaged sections would later serve as invasion routes for warp entities, creating permanent weak points in reality's structure that would contribute to future catastrophes. Biological warfare's legacy manifested in countless corrupted ecosystems. Worlds touched by the Old One's desperate final weapons developed bizarre properties: sentient atmospheres, crystalline forests that sang in dead languages, oceans that remembered and replayed ancient battles on their surfaces. These planets became evolutionary pressure cookers, spawning species that defied conventional biology. Many of these organisms would later evolve into threats that would plague the galaxy's younger races. The Enslaver Plague's aftermath permanently altered the warp's nature. The Immaterium, once a relatively calm dimension of pure potential, transformed into a roiling sea of chaos and predatory consciousness. This transformation created a feedback loop. The more violent and emotionally charged the material universe became, the more turbulent the warp grew, which in turn influenced real space events toward greater violence and emotional extremes. Necron society emerged fundamentally transformed. The majority of their population became mindless automata, while their nobility retained personalities warped by the biotransference process. Their victory proved Pyrrhic. They achieved immortality, but lost the capacity to enjoy it. This profound loss drove many Necron lords to obsession and madness, their eternal existence becoming a prison of repetition and fading memories. Their subsequent war against the Katan further fractured their civilization, leading to their eventual descent into hibernation. The Eldar inherited a poison chalice of galactic dominion. Their artificial creation and accelerated evolution left them with immense psychic potential, but also devastating spiritual vulnerabilities. The trauma of witnessing their creator's fall and the horror of the war embedded itself in their racial memory. This inheritance would eventually contribute to their species' tragic fall into hedonism and excess, as they desperately sought sensations to fill the void left by their maker's absence. Technological regression gripped the galaxy as knowledge became lost or corrupted. The most advanced Old One's technologies relied on principles that younger races couldn't comprehend, let alone replicate. Surviving artifacts of their civilization became objects of reverence or terror, their true purposes forgotten. This loss of knowledge created a dark age that would last millions of years, with successive civilizations building upon misunderstood fragments of ancient technologies. The Krork's devolution into orcs represented another profound consequence. Without the Old One's guidance, their sophisticated biological programming began to degrade. Yet their core function, to fight and adapt, remained intact, creating a species that would become an eternal threat to galactic stability. Their genetic memory of the war manifested as an instinctive drive toward violence and technological advancement, though the purpose behind these impulses was long forgotten. Environmental devastation reached unprecedented scales. Entire solar systems were stripped of energy by the Katan's feeding, leaving behind dead stars and frozen worlds. Other systems disappeared entirely, phased out of reality by Necron weapons or consumed by warp phenomena. The galaxy's spiral arms showed permanent scars where stellar density suddenly dropped, creating vast dead zones that would take millions of years to naturally repopulate. Perhaps most significantly, the war in heaven established patterns of conflict that would echo through time. Future wars would repeatedly mirror its essential nature, battles between order and chaos, material and immaterial, biology and technology. The fundamental oppositions revealed during this ancient conflict would resurface again and again, as though the galaxy itself couldn't forget the trauma of its first great war. This cycle of violence became woven into the very fabric of reality, ensuring that peace would forever remain transient in a universe scarred by its most devastating conflict. Molecular reconstruction chambers represented the pinnacle of Old One's biotechnology, enabling them to rewrite genetic codes in real time. These devices operated on principles that transcended conventional biology, manipulating life at its most fundamental level. Unlike crude genetic engineering, these chambers could completely redesign organisms while maintaining consciousness and memory, allowing for evolutionary leaps that would normally take millions of years. The technology's sophisticated interfaces responded directly to psychic commands, enabling the old ones to shape life through pure thought. Webway construction involved technologies that bent dimensional barriers through controlled application of psychic energy. The old ones developed specialized gates that could fold space-time, creating corridors that existed between reality and the warp. These structures incorporated living crystals that responded to psychic frequencies, allowing for dynamic route adjustments and automatic defensive measures. The gate's internal mechanisms included fail-safes that could seal off corrupted sections, though these protections ultimately proved insufficient against the scale of damage inflicted during the war. Combat doctrine relied heavily on synchronized psychic attacks amplified through crystalline matrices. Entire fleets could coordinate their consciousness through these networks, enabling simultaneous strikes across multiple dimensions. The Old Ones' vessels themselves incorporated organic technology that could adapt to damage, regenerate hull breaches, and evolve new defensive measures in response to enemy weapons. These ships' neural networks could process tactical information faster than any mechanical computer, making them formidable even when outnumbered. Necron Gauss weapons developed as a direct counter to the Old Ones' biological superiority. These devices worked by breaking down matter at the molecular level, stripping atoms away layer by layer. The technology proved particularly effective against organic targets, as it could bypass most energy shields and ignore regenerative capabilities. The psychological impact of watching victims slowly disintegrate created a terror effect that sometimes proved as valuable as the weapon's physical damage. Phase blade technology represented another Necron innovation that fundamentally changed warfare. These weapons could shift between material and immaterial states, allowing them to bypass any physical defense. The technology relied on quantum uncertainty principles pushed to macroscopic scales, creating blades that existed in multiple phases simultaneously. This advancement forced the Old Ones to develop new defensive strategies, as their traditional energy shields proved useless against weapons that could simply phase through them. The Old Ones' mastery of evolutionary acceleration manifested in their ability to create specialized warrior breeds for specific tactical situations. They could engineer entire species with natural weapons perfectly adapted to counter enemy capabilities, then rapidly produce armies of these creatures through accelerated growth chambers. This biological flexibility allowed them to respond to new threats with remarkable speed, though the practice stretched the fabric of reality in dangerous ways. Necron quantum tunneling networks enabled instantaneous communication and coordination across vast distances. This technology provided a significant advantage over the Old Ones' psychic networks, as it couldn't be disrupted by warp interference. The system worked by entangling particles across space-time, creating unbreakable and instantaneous communication links. This capability allowed Necron forces to execute complex strategies with perfect synchronization, overwhelming enemies through superior coordination. The Katan's reality manipulation engines fundamentally alter the laws of physics within their influence. These devices could change gravitational constants, alter the speed of light, or even temporarily suspend causality. The technology operated by drawing upon the Katan's fundamental connection to the material universe, allowing them to rewrite its laws at will. These weapons proved particularly effective against the Old Ones' psychic technology, as they could simply change the rules governing how such powers functioned. Tactical doctrines evolved rapidly as both sides developed countermeasures to each other's technologies. The Old Ones favored swift, devastating strikes through the webway, using their ability to appear anywhere instantly to overcome the Necrons' superior durability. The Necrons responded with phase shifts and dimensional anchors, turning the Old Ones' mobility advantage against them by predicting and blocking their likely emergence points. This tactical arms race pushed both civilizations to develop increasingly extreme technologies. Defensive installations incorporated multiple layers of both technological and psychic protection. The Old Ones created fortress worlds with sentient atmospheres that could detect and eliminate threats before they reached the surface. Necron tomb complexes featured temporal shields that could loop sections of time, trapping attackers in endless cycles while defenders responded at their leisure. These defensive measures often survived long after their creator's disappearance, creating deadly hazards that persist into the modern era. Sarek, the Silent King, bore the weight of his species' transformation upon his crystalline shoulders. His decision to accept the Katan's offer of immortality stemmed from genuine desire to save his people, though the price proved far higher than imagined. Records indicate his final moments of organic existence included a desperate attempt to warn others of the true cost, but the biotransference process had already begun. His subsequent leadership during the rebellion against the Katan demonstrated tactical brilliance tinged with eternal regret as he orchestrated the imprisonment of the very gods who had granted his people immortality. Among the Old Ones, the entity known as the Messenger stood as both architect and prophet. Their mastery of genetic manipulation produced the Eldar race, carefully crafting each aspect of their biology and psychology. Yet the Messenger's greatest achievement became their ultimate burden, foreseeing the catastrophic consequences of their civilization's actions but failing to convince their peers of the impending doom. Their final recorded words, preserved in ancient Eldar texts, spoke of cycles of creation and destruction that would echo through eternity. The Deceiver, most subtle of the Katan, orchestrated the grand deception that led to the Necrontier's downfall. Operating through countless avatars and agents, they wove a web of lies so intricate that even other Satan found themselves entangled. Their mastery of manipulation extended beyond mere deception. They understood the fundamental nature of sentient desire, using this knowledge to engineer the greatest betrayal in galactic history. The Deceiver's true motivations remained enigmatic, suggesting plans within plans that continue unfolding even after their imprisonment. Ashian, the Endless, emerged as one of the most successful Old One military commanders. Their innovative application of evolving warrior breeds revolutionized biological warfare. Under their direction, entire ecosystems became weapons, with each creature precisely engineered to fulfill specific tactical roles. Ashian's greatest triumph came during the defense of the Seven Spheres, where their rapidly adapting forces held off a Necron assault for 1,000 years, though the victory ultimately proved Pyrrhic as the sustained combat created permanent tears in reality's fabric. The Nightbringer embodied primal terror itself, their very presence permanently scarring the psyche of countless species. Their feeding process involved not just consuming life energy, but absorbing the very concept of death from their victims. This cosmic vampire's actions embedded the fear of mortality so deeply into the collective consciousness of sentient races that it manifests even in species that evolved long after their imprisonment. Ancient records suggest the Nightbringer took particular pleasure in developing increasingly horrific methods of harvesting life essence. Oraskar, the master of the original Tomb World archives, preserved crucial knowledge through the Devastation. Their decision to maintain detailed records of both victories and atrocities provided future generations with invaluable insights into the war's true nature. Despite numerous attempts by various factions to destroy or alter these archives, Oruskar's sophisticated security measures ensured their survival. Their historical accounts, though filtered through a Necron perspective, remain one of the most comprehensive sources of information about the conflict. The Void Dragon's mastery over technology and energy made them perhaps the most dangerous of all Satan. Their ability to control machines and corrupt artificial systems posed a unique threat to both sides of the conflict. Ancient texts speak of entire fleets turning against their crews at the dragon's command, and of weapons that would inexplicably fail in their presence. Their influence extended beyond the war itself, as fragments of their power continued affecting technological development for millions of years afterwards. Among the created races, the Eldar hero Ulthanesh demonstrated unprecedented psychic potential. Their abilities approached those of their creators, allowing them to challenge even Katan avatars in direct combat. Ulthanesh's leadership during the later stages of the war proved crucial in preserving significant portions of the Webway network. Their teachings formed the foundation of Eldar civilization's psychic traditions, though many of their most powerful techniques were lost or sealed away due to their dangerous nature. The Farron of the Sautek dynasty, whose true name remains lost to time, pioneered many of the strategic innovations that gave the Necrons their eventual victory. Their development of quantum-based battlefield coordination systems revolutionized warfare, enabling unprecedented levels of tactical synchronization. The Farron's personal modifications to the biotransference process allowed them to retain more of their original personality than most, though this preservation of consciousness became a curse as they watched their civilization's slow descent into madness. The nameless Old One who first discovered the enslaver's presence bears particular historical significance. Their desperate warning about the growing tears in reality went unheeded until it was too late. Records suggest they attempted to develop countermeasures against these warp entities, creating specialized warrior breeds designed to combat psychic threats. Their eventual fate remains unknown, though some traditions claim they sacrificed themselves to seal a major warp breach, their essence becoming part of the barrier between realities. Scattered across dead worlds, mysterious crystal structures pulse with unknowable energies. These ancient devices, neither purely technological nor entirely psychic in nature, defy conventional analysis. Some theorists suggest they form a vast computational network, processing calculations beyond mortal comprehension. Others believe they serve as anchor points for reality itself, preventing the complete unraveling of space-time in regions devastated by the war in heaven. Their true purpose remains unknown, though their activation patterns suggest continued operation according to some unfathomable program. The fate of the Old Ones themselves presents perhaps the greatest enigma. Various theories compete to explain their disappearance: extinction, transcendence, or retreat into hidden dimensions. Some evidence suggests they fractured into multiple sub-factions, each choosing a different path of survival. Cryptic references in Eldar mythology hint at Old Ones who transform themselves into pure energy beings, while others speak of secret enclaves frozen in time, waiting for specific cosmic conditions to reawaken. The truth likely encompasses aspects of multiple theories, reflecting the Old One's mastery of existence itself. Unexplained temporal anomalies continue manifesting around certain Necron tomb worlds. These time distortions appear to follow precise patterns, suggesting deliberate design rather than random damage to reality's fabric. Some Mechanicum scholars hypothesize these phenomena represent attempts by imprisoned Katan to communicate across time itself, while others believe they indicate the presence of temporal weapons still actively defending ancient sites. The regular geometric progression of these anomalies implies purpose, though their true nature remains elusive. The question of missing species haunts xenoarchaeologists. Historical records and genetic evidence indicate the Old Ones created far more races than currently known, yet many remain unaccounted for. These lost species' absence creates significant gaps in understanding the war in Heaven's full scope. Theories range from mass extinction events to successful evolution into energy beings, while some suggest these races exist in pocket dimensions, isolated from normal space-time by the war's aftermath. The genetic legacy of these missing links may still influence evolution across the galaxy. Certain webway passages lead to locations that should not exist, spaces where conventional physics break down completely. These regions demonstrate properties suggesting they serve as interfaces to higher dimensions beyond normal space-time. Whether these represent failed experiments, defensive measures, or doorways to realms where the Old Ones still exist remains hotly debated. Expeditions investigating these anomalies often disappear entirely, though sometimes impossible messages return, describing realities that contradict fundamental laws of existence. The true nature of the Katan's imprisonment poses another significant mystery. While Necron records indicate their successful capture and subdivision into shards, questions remain about the completeness of this imprisonment. Periodic manifestations of power suggesting Satan influence occur with statistical improbability, hinting at some degree of continued agency. Whether these represent random energy discharges from damaged containers or indicate some long-term escape strategy remains unclear. The mathematical patterns underlying these events suggest deliberate action rather than chance. Archaeological discoveries occasionally unearth evidence of technologies that appear to violate known physical laws. These artifacts demonstrate capabilities that should be impossible, such as objects that exist in negative time or devices that operate by transmitting information backwards through causality. The principles underlying these technologies remain incomprehensible, suggesting fundamental gaps in current understanding of reality's structure. Whether these represent weapons, tools, or components of larger systems remains unknown. The Krork's original design specifications present another enduring puzzle. While their devolution into orcs is well documented, the full scope of their intended capabilities remains unclear. Certain orc specimens demonstrate abilities far beyond their species norm, possibly representing activation of dormant genetic coding. Whether these occurrences indicate partial recovery of original Krork abilities or represent random mutations remains debatable. The possibility that the orcs retain access to their original genetic potential poses significant concerns for galactic stability. Unexplained psychic phenomena continue manifesting around sites of major War in Heaven battles. These manifestations appear to replay fragments of ancient conflicts, but with subtle variations each time. Whether these represent actual glimpses of past events, psychic echoes, or something more complex remains unclear. The consistent alterations in each replay suggest these phenomena may serve some purpose beyond mere historical recording, possibly acting as complex messages or warnings encoded in reality itself. The ultimate purpose behind the Old One's massive genetic engineering projects raises profound questions. While surface motivations such as creating warrior species seem clear, deeper patterns in their creation's genetic codes suggest more complex goals. Mathematical analysis of various species' genetic structures reveals embedded patterns too precise to be accidental, yet their meaning remains obscure. These discoveries suggest the Old One's biological engineering served purposes extending far beyond the immediate demands of warfare, possibly relating to long-term plans still unfolding across millions of years. Echoes of the War in Heaven continue reverberating through time, shaping conflicts millennia after the final shots were fired. Each major galactic war since has unconsciously mirrored aspects of that first, greatest conflict, the eternal struggle between order and chaos, between physical and psychic power, between organic evolution and technological transcendence. The Horus Heresy, the Beast Arises, the Tyrannic Wars, all bear subtle imprints of patterns established during that ancient catastrophe. Modern warfare inherits tactical principles first developed during those forgotten battles. The Imperium's reliance on overwhelming force mirrors Necron strategies, while Eldar hit-and-run tactics evolved from Old One military doctrines. Even the Tyrannid's biological adaptability reflects principles of warfare first established by the Old One's evolving warrior breeds. These echoes persist not through conscious imitation, but through the very structure of effective combat in a universe shaped by that first war. The galaxy's prevalent species carry genetic and cultural scars from this ancient conflict. Humanity's instinctive fear of darkness traces back to the Nightbringer's influence. The Eldar's psychological complexities stem from their artificial creation and the trauma of witnessing their maker's fall. Orc society's endless drive toward war and technological advancement represents corrupted programming from their original Krork design. These influences run deeper than mere cultural memory, affecting fundamental aspects of species development. Technological development across the galaxy follows paths laid down during the War in Heaven. The Mechanicum's religious reverence for technology echoes ancient reactions to Necron weapons that seemed to defy physical law. The Dark Age of technology's achievements merely rediscovered principles the Old Ones considered fundamental. Even the limitations of current technology reflect boundaries established during that conflict. Attempts to push beyond certain limits often result in disaster, as though reality itself remembers the dangers of unlimited progress. The warp's current turbulent nature directly results from damage inflicted during the war. What was once a calm sea of potential became a roiling mass of emotions and predatory consciousness. This transformation fundamentally altered how species interact with the immaterium. Psychic powers, once representing controlled manipulation of natural forces, became inherently dangerous as practitioners risked drawing the attention of entities born from that ancient conflict. The very nature of space travel changed, as the warp's instability made conventional interstellar travel nearly impossible. Religious and philosophical concepts across countless cultures trace their origins to this period. The Eldar pantheon represents metaphorical interpretations of Old One leaders and principles. Imperial concepts of the God Emperor's immortality unconsciously echo ancient encounters with the Katan. Even chaos itself, in its modern form, emerged from patterns of corruption and destruction first established during the war. These cultural echoes demonstrate how deeply that ancient conflict embedded itself in the collective psyche of all sentient beings. The physical structure of the galaxy bears permanent scars from this conflict. Dead zones between spiral arms mark regions where entire solar systems were consumed by weapons that violated causality itself. Spatial anomalies that defy modern understanding represent wounds in reality that never fully healed. The distribution of tomb worlds and webway gates continues influencing strategic calculations, as ancient weapons and defenses remain potent enough to alter the course of modern wars. Time itself appears altered in certain regions, suggesting damage to fundamental cosmic structures. Temporal anomalies cluster around ancient battlefields, creating zones where causality operates differently. These distortions affect everything from planetary development to the emergence of new species, subtly guiding evolution along paths influenced by that ancient conflict. Some theorists suggest these temporal wounds actually prevent worse catastrophes, acting as pressure release valves for a damaged universe. The war's influence extends even to the development of new species. Emerging races often display characteristics that would have proved advantageous during that ancient conflict, as though the galaxy's evolutionary processes remain influenced by threats that no longer actively exist. This phenomenon suggests either lingering environmental pressures or deeper alterations to how life itself develops in the post-war universe. The emergence of humans as a psychically capable species may represent one example of this influenced evolution. Perhaps most significantly, the War in Heaven established cycles of civilization that continue repeating through history. Species rise to prominence, discover ancient technologies they don't fully understand, and eventually fall to hubris or external threats. Each cycle adds new layers of complexity to an already intricate pattern, building towards some unknown conclusion. Whether this represents the final plans of the Old Ones, the manipulations of imprisoned Katan, or simply the universe's attempt to heal itself, remains the greatest mystery of all, one that may only be solved when the final consequences of that first, greatest war finally manifest.